website, the Washington Free Beacon, funded the original Fusion GPS research into Donald Trump. According to York, Fusion GPS was also looking into other Republican presidential candidates. The Washington Free Beacon is responding to this explosive information with a statement confirming York's reporting and adding, quote, "The Free Beacon had no knowledge of or connection to the Steele dossier, did not pay for the dossier, and never had contact with, knowledge of, or provide payment for any work performed by Christopher Steele. Nor did we have any knowledge of the relationship between Fusion GPS and the Democratic National Committee, Perkins Coie, and the Clinton campaign." Joining us now is Washington Examiner Chief Political Correspondent Byron York. All right, good evening, Byron.
Good evening, Judge.
All right, now you've got everyone talking about what this Fusion GPS situation is. You've got the whole thing turned on its head. Now it appears that the original funding for the GPS, the Fusion GPS, that we thought began with the Clinton campaign and the DNC, was funded by the Washington Free Beacon, which is a conservative publication. Tell us what you know.
It is indeed. You know, this week we found out that the whole Russia part of the Trump dossier, the part alleging collusion with Russians, was funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. But we'd always known that earlier than that, several months earlier, starting in late 2015, a Republican group had funded opposition research, not about Russia, but opposition research into Donald Trump and some other candidates. And now, tonight, I reported who it was. It was the Washington Free Beacon, which is a conservative website kind of with attitude. It's a website that mixes journalism and activism, and some of its top staffers have history in journalism, activism, and politics. And they're the ones behind this original Oppo effort.
All right, so people are now saying, you know, who is the Washington Free Beacon? I mean, who owns the Free Beacon? I understand at one point it was actually a 501c4, not-for-profit?
It was. It started in 2012 as a 501c4. There was a group called the Center for American Freedom that ran it. One of its board members was Bill Kristol, the former editor of the Weekly Standard, who's a very prominent Never Trump voice in our political debate today. And then 2014 it becomes a private organization, and we do know that Paul Singer, who is a New York hedge fund billionaire who's contributed to many conservative causes, is a major funder of the Washington Free Beacon today.
And Paul Singer, we can assume, was someone who was anti-Trump as well?
Very much so. Certainly in the Never Trump camp, later endorsed Marco Rubio, and actually wanted to somehow stop Trump at the convention. You know, there was a kind of a last-ditch effort to hopefully stop him at the convention, which didn't work. So yes, Mr. Singer was definitely very anti-Trump at the time this Oppo research was going on.
All right, and do we know who else was being? Did they seek this opposition research on? I understand it wasn't just Donald Trump.
That's a good question, and the answer is I don't know. They did say tonight, when the Free Beacon acknowledged after my report, they published an acknowledgement of all this. They said that in the fall of 2015, that's Donald Trump was the leading candidate, if you remember back then, in the Republican race. In the fall of 2015, they started this Oppo research project with Fusion GPS, looking into what they called multiple Republican candidates, including Donald Trump. So unclear who those other ones are right now.
And as you know, going forward, I mean, the Washington Free Beacon has said, you know, we basically did not do any of this stuff based upon a request by individuals. Are they saying who the individuals are?
Well, look, a lot of people, there had been gossip that this was a Paul Singer operation, and people had said that he was the one who was behind all this. And I think what the Free Beacon is saying is that Singer is a major funder, but that the Free Beacon has in the past used employed, retained Oppo research firms in its work, and that this was something like that. Now, I got to say, this is not standard journalistic practice. I mean, you go to places like the Washington Examiner or Washington Post or any other organization, and they don't go around hiring Politico Oppo research firms to do work for them. So this is an unusual situation.
Well, clearly, if they're investigative reporters, they wouldn't just, subcontract someone in opposition research to give them their information. But Byron, stay with us. I'm also going to ask that a few more join us. Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt and the American Conservative Union chair Matt Schlapp. All right, gentlemen, I'll go to you first, Matt. I mean, what is your take on the information that Byron has just released this evening?
Well, there's been a lot of smoke around this for a long time, and I give Byron great credit because it just seems like there is almost an access of political evil here, people who are willing to do almost anything to stop Donald Trump. And there's some familiar names involved. Bill Kristol, who we've all debated throughout the last 2 years, who is a prominent never-Trumper. Paul Singer, who's put his money where his mouth is to do everything to stop him. You know, Judge, the thing I think is interesting is how did it move from this Republican effort to stop Trump back over now to the DNC and to the Democrats through Perkins Coie, this law firm? There's a lot more here that we all need to know.
Yeah, and Byron, do we know anything about that? Because as I understand it, the original investigation from the fall of 15 to the spring of 16, and then it's ended in terms of the funding by the Republicans or, the anti-Trump people, and then it's picked up by the DNC and the Clinton campaign. Who contacted who?
Yeah, we do know something about this. That you're right. What we've been talking about, this effort starts in the fall of 2015, and it's a conventional Oppo research operation. It's looking at Donald Trump's casinos, his businesses, charges that he did this or that bad thing. So it's kind of a conventional Oppo research, and it goes on until early May. And if you remember, on May 3rd, Trump won the Indiana primary, beat Ted Cruz in that, and essentially clinched the nomination. So this effort stopped at that point. And what we do know is that after that, Glenn Simpson, who is the head of Fusion GPS, shopped the project to Democrats, and the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign picked it up. And at some point after that, that's when they hire Christopher Steele, this former British spy, and that's when it turns toward Russia.
All right, and so Charlie, I'll go to you now. We just heard that, or we know that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, John Podesta, go before Congress with Mark Elias, the attorney here from the law firm in question, Perkins Coie, through which the money was funneled before it got to Steele. And so the question is, are those two individuals at risk of having lied to Congress because they said they knew nothing about it?
Well, certainly the report reveals something that a lot of us have known for a long time, and that is the incestuous nature of the way business is handled in Washington. But I'll be honest with you, for me, doing the Oppo research, everybody does Oppo research. I'm not terribly concerned about all of that. What does concern me, though, is that we've had this past 6 months where Democrats, in particular, or rather the past year, we've had Democrats, in particular the Clintons, have made such a big deal about these Russia connections, and they've been lying all this time about their own fingerprints all over this completely fraudulent dossier, which then led to the Obama administration launching, I think, an unprecedented investigation using the most powerful intelligence service on the planet into FBI, a political opponent.
Right. And Matt, I see you nodding your head. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I'm disgusted by the fact that Donald Trump Jr. gets an email about meeting with people who have information, and he's called a traitor, and it said that he's colluding with the Russian government. Hillary Clinton and her team went to Russia cronies to get information, and there you get away with calling it opposition research. That cannot stand.
Well, and Byron, you know, you've got to, this whole thing is based upon, there's the Mueller investigation, as well as the unmasking that came as a result of FISA warrants, are based on this dossier, which apparently is purchased by Hillary Clinton and her friends, who say they know nothing about it, which supposedly costs millions of dollars. You know, my faith in the American justice system, I'm a prosecutor and a judge, I'm destroyed by this, because right now it's fruit of the poisonous tree. If that's false, everything else comes down, and Mueller's got to end it.
Let me add one thing in addition to the Mueller factor here. The reason we're talking about this now, the reason we learned earlier this week that it was the DNC and the Clinton campaign, and the reason we learned today that it was the Washington Free Beacon, is because the House Intelligence Committee, and the much maligned person of Devin Nunes, had issued a subpoena for Fusion GPS's bank records. They had been stonewalled by Fusion GPS before that. People had come from Fusion, had come before the committee and asserted their Fifth Amendment rights and refused to answer questions. So they subpoenaed bank records, and that is what is shaking this loose in response, in anticipation of their bank records being handed over to the House. All of a sudden, whoa, we find out that Hillary Clinton and the DNC had funded. And now we find out about Fusion GPS. So a lot of this is being driven by the House Intelligence Committee investigation.
Yes, and you know what, Charlie, to them we certainly owe, they get kudos. I mean, on Monday, Fusion is supposed to respond to a subpoena handing over the names of clients, their bank records. What do you think Fusion is going to do?
Absolutely. We owe a total debt of gratitude to them. And the big difference here between today and what we've seen for the past 25 years is Democrats aren't circling the wagons around the Clintons. Normally, when the Clintons get in trouble and when they cause a mess like this, the whole party circles around them. Now you have the DNC standing back and saying, hey, man, we didn't know anything about this. Talk to them. And you even have former CIA Director Leon Panetta saying, we have to investigate all of this. That's huge stuff.
And where's Hillary? Where is she? She's been hiding out. You know, she's been so talkative, and now she got so quiet.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is that once the law firm Perkins Cole, who is the initial receiver of the monies, millions, once they waive the privilege, then the focus is on Fusion. Fusion is now in big trouble. I think it's all going to start crumbling. Byron, again, thanks to you. What can we look forward to next week?
Well, this is big. This is the next step, which is that the House Intel Committee has also subpoenaed the FBI for all of its information about the dossier. Because you have to remember, Christopher Steele went to the FBI, offered it his stuff, and they kind of took him under its wing and started using this dossier material in some way. So Devin Nunes subpoenaed them on August 24th. He was totally stonewalled. They have not turned over anything. Now, Speaker Paul Ryan in the last couple of days has said, look, this is not just one committee chairman. This is the House of Representatives telling the FBI you have to comply with this request. And the FBI promises to respond next week, and that could be really, really big news to see what they did with this dossier information.
And what they did with it, and how much Jim Comey knew about what was going on. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. And coming up, a former high-ranking Obama administration official is agreeing that there needs to be an investigation into who paid for the anti-Trump dossier. We'll tell you who as this special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. More and more people are demanding answers about this anti-Trump dossier, including President Obama's former CIA director, Leon Panetta. Take a look.
How could both the chair of the DNC and the Clinton campaign not know about these payments?
Well, it's obviously something that the Intelligence Committee is going to have to look at. You know, knowing presidential campaigns, they're big operations, and somehow the left hand may not know what the right hand is doing. And that could be the case here. But I really do think that the committee is going to have to get into this, determine just exactly what happened, who knew what, and when.
Joining us now with a reaction is Salem Radio nationally syndicated host Larry Elder and radio talk show host and Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce. All right, Tammy, I have to ask you this. Okay, so we got Leon Panetta, and everyone's giving him credit because he said, obviously, we have to look at it. But then he took like the slant butt. These are big operations. You never know. The left hand may not know what the right hand is doing. What's your take?
That's just habit, because that's what they're always thinking, and that's what they're always saying. That's the dynamic. Plausible deniability, when you know you're doing these things. The fact of the matter is here, I think the Clintons, though, and we know the Democrats, have been very sloppy. If you think about the Pakistanis running the DNC system, right? The server itself with Hillary, these are individuals who've gotten away with so much for so long. They figure they're immune. They're made of Teflon, but they're not. We're finding this out. Now, Panetta also, though, is smart enough to know when something is so much of a mess that you've got to at least stop the fire, that this could be so bad that he can't even deny that that an investigation at least might stop the disaster.
It's called for.
Yeah.
All right, Larry, I'll go to you. And, you know, Leon Panetta. Now, I remember Leon Panetta from Benghazi, all right? In 2013, Leon Panetta said something like, and he was drinking that Clinton Kool-Aid. We didn't have an intelligence warning. We didn't have enough time to get armed military assets to respond to Benghazi. When we were in Sigonella, we were in Northern Africa. That's when I stopped with Panetta. But what's your take on Panetta now?
Well, Panetta is usually pretty reasonable, Judge. He's one of the many in Obama's national security team that wanted him to leave a stay-behind force in ISIS. And one of the retired generals, Ray Odierno, said that had there been a stay-behind force, ISIS could have been dealt with. So Leon Panetta is not a loon. But it's fascinating how nobody seemed to know who paid. Debbie Wasserman Schultz said she had no knowledge of this. John Podesta had no knowledge of it. Hillary's spokesperson had no knowledge of it. I wonder about Donna Brazile. Donna Brazile was vice chair, and as you know, she played the shenanigans and got Hillary the debate questions. I wonder what her role is. And has Hillary been asked about this, Judge? Has anybody asked Hillary about this?
Yeah, well, isn't it interesting that we haven't heard from Hillary in the past few days? And you know, but
she's on her book tour, Judge. She's doing a book tour. How come somebody hasn't called her and asked her?
I thought maybe she was in the woods.
She's out there.
She might be in the woods with that dog again. But let me ask you this. All right, if even Leon Panetta, Tammy, is now saying, yeah, maybe we ought to look at this. Does this now take away some of the steam? Shouldn't we now recognize that for all the talk for the last year about collusion and Trump and Russia, not one iota of evidence, but now it's almost like the noose is getting tighter. The evidence is becoming pretty obvious.
Yeah. Real evidence. And the thing that Mr. Panetta called awkward was when Podesta in front of Congress with Mark Elias sitting next to him, who was facilitating all of this, when he said he had no idea who was paying for it, when the man who was managing it, who was his personal attorney, was the manager. So we know, and this is where you realize that this is out of the box, that the genie's out of the bottle,
right,
and they've got to be able to do it, and there have to be investigations, and this is where the real panic sets in, because they realize how sloppy they've been, all the doors that weren't closed, because in part, I think Larry would agree, is because they expected her to win. So they never locked the doors. They never figured it out.
That's a great point.
That's the thing that really is killing them.
You know, Larry, 18 USC 1001 making a false statement to Congress. We've got Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Podesta with Mark Elias, the attorney, who even the New York Times said you lied to us for a year and we're fed up with you. All right. They're in big trouble right now. And it seems to me, you know, there have been calls for Mueller's resignation for the last week. I mean, some serious calls in light of this uranium deal. So what does Mueller do? Does he now start pressing for indictments so that it looks like he's doing his job?
I think he ought to resign. I agree with the Wall Street Journal. He should resign and step aside and let somebody else do it. And regarding Mark Elias, you're absolutely right. There are at least 2 New York Times reporters who say he flat out lied to us. There's even some suggestion that Fusion GPS may have paid journalists to plan stories. This thing is just now beginning, Judge, and it looks like the whole thing has reversed. The real colluder appears to be Hillary, the DNC, and maybe even the FBI.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to that in a second, but let me just add something to that. Elias is the attorney for Podesta, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. He also is the attorney for the DNC. Right. So one of the attorneys for it, no, I take that back. He's the attorney at Perkins Cole, the law firm that received the money. Here's the thing. If he knows that they were lying, Podesta and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, right, and it's pretty clear they were, he is also guilty of subornation of perjury. Wow. For sitting there and allowing them to lie to Congress. But in terms of what Larry just said, I mean, what's your take on that?
Look, I think that Mueller's in an interesting spot, and the Wall Street Journal was the big caller for his resignation because of his length of time with the FBI, and with the FBI possibly being part of the collusion, as Larry noted, that would make him, really he's not able to be fair in the sense of judging them and investigating them. Just because he's been there over 10 years and because of his relationship, not just with Comey, but his own work. So that's a fair dynamic with what we know now. What troubles me is Mr. Mueller knows himself his whole history, and yet he felt he was fine that he would take this job. Everyone says, oh, he's so fabulous and he's a really great guy, just like what they said about Comey. He should have demurred, saying, I really have too much involved here. I'm not the right person for this. But
or I'm a little too busy for this. And the fact
either way, yes,
that Mueller has always said, or has been involved in everything, but from being in the FBI at the time of the investigation of the Russians who were carrying on this organized criminal racketeering enterprise, trying to bribe people in the United States, and the witness now being allowed to talk, hopefully in the very near future, by Jeff Sessions. No, so Comey is too much involved. Comey is the one who should be investigated. What do you say, Larry? Not
well, that's
Comey,
right. And Comey has this. Mueller has this long friendship with James Comey. This whole thing absolutely stinks. This is an outrage. It vindicates Donald Trump. It shows you that he was right when he said that he was being wiretapped at Trump Towers. Some of his aides were being wiretapped at Trump Towers. And the question is, did Mueller know that this dossier was phony, yet used it as a ruse in order to go after Donald Trump? Was it used to get a warrant to tap Donald Trump, even though the people knew when they relied on this dossier that it was full of crap? These are the kind of questions that need to be answered. And this thing is just now beginning, and again, it vindicates Donald Trump. You have to have an IQ 2 points under plant life now to still believe that there's some sort of Trump collusion going on right here.
Quickly, the only person who hasn't been involved in this mess is Jeff Sessions, and he's the only person who recused himself. He is the one guy who's not a part of this.
Right, and I'm not sure he should have recused himself. Anyway, coming up, gotta go. Coming up, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse for Hillary Clinton, there are new developments in another one of her scandals. We'll tell you why this particular scandal isn't going away anytime soon. That and more as a special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. More bad news for Hillary Clinton this week, involving another one of her scandals. The chairman of the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees have announced that they're opening a new probe into how the FBI and DOJ handled the investigation into Clinton's private server. Also this week, Judicial Watch announced that last year the FBI recovered 72,000 pages of Clinton email records, 40,000 of which the State Department still has to process. Joining us now is the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, and from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jordan Sekulel. All right, Tom, let me ask you, what is the latest in terms of the information that you've gotten from your subpoenas?
Well, these are Freedom of Information Act requests. We've been asking for these emails for years, and they've been stonewalling the release of the information even under this new administration. The deep state's running things at the State Department, Justice Department on these Clinton emails. And as you highlighted, there are 72,000 pages of Clinton emails the FBI went and found. And these are the emails Hillary Clinton tried to delete that the FBI found or recovered. And they've only released a few of them. And at the rate they're releasing them to us now, we won't get all of them until 2020. And on top of that, there are 2,800 pages of records or documents over on Anthony Weiner's laptop that Yuma Abedin had that were also government records that are also from the Clinton email server. We don't know what's in them. Is it classified information? Is it Russia information? What was being deleted by Hillary Clinton is the big mystery.
Well, you know, my take, if we've got 72,000 emails and the State Department that was asked for them by, at the time of Benghazi, how many years ago was that, in 2012, and it's taken them this long, I have an idea. Let's defund Mueller and his special counsel and use that money to get people to start releasing those State Department emails. And you know, Jordan, what say you about this?
Well, I think that I am encouraged that Congress is now looking at this, Judge, put with a new lens in a couple different ways. One, when it comes to the new investigations under how the FBI handled this whole really investigation, they never wanted to call it that, matter, I guess, into Hillary Clinton, why they were so public and kept telling Congress and giving them updates about Hillary Clinton, and then made the ultimate call not to prosecute instead of deferring to the Department of Justice, the normal course of action. And then also, you know, Trey Gowdy, who chairs Oversight Committee, wants to bring Jim Comey back to testify under oath. That's important. But second, and I think this ties to a FOIA that we're working on right now at ACLJ, is that the FBI, we now know, was part of, had inked a deal, it appears, with Christopher Steele to continue the opposition research that Hillary Clinton's campaign was paying for through Fusion GPS. We want to know how far along the FBI went. So we filed with a FOIA with the FBI to get that information, Judge, because that is absurd. As you had said earlier in the broadcast, it taints everything if the starting point for the unmasking, if the starting point for the special counsel, if the starting point for all of this Trump-Russia info is really a Hillary Clinton Russian scandal.
Well, clearly. I mean, you know, people have used this term all week, for the last few days. The whole thing is turned on its head. But, Tom, $50,000, I believe, is gone from the FBI to Christopher Steele. How do they justify that? And is that the correct amount?
Oh, we don't know, and we've asked for the documents, too. In fact, we're already in federal court on it. And the Justice Department FBI have told us they can't confirm or deny whether any documents exist about the dossier or payments related to it. So this is where we stand. Everyone's just talking about the FBI's relationship with Christopher Steele, but the FBI doesn't want to say anything about it. And now they're going to turn over some documents to Congress. We wonder if they're going to update the court as to whether they still believe they can credibly say they can't confirm or deny whether documents exist. Well, lack of transparency is convenient. It's helping Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and hurting President Trump.
Well, clearly. And isn't it...
It's also hurting the credibility of law enforcement. You know, Judge, I mean, that is ultimately what is so damaging here, is that people's faith in our top law enforcement agencies, like the FBI, it's totally undercut when they behave this way.
Well, clearly, as between Comey and Mueller, they have done more to destroy the country's confidence in the FBI. As someone who worked in law enforcement for over 3 decades, what they have done is stunning. If this Trump dossier is the basis of FISA warrants and the unmasking of Americans and was used knowingly, funded by the Clinton campaign, and Jim Comey is the guy who goes out when it's not his job, Tom, and makes a decision that he's going to exonerate Hillary, I mean, then the whole criminal justice system falls on its head.
You know, the Clinton campaign and the DNC have their problems with the dossier, but to the extent the FBI and Justice Department used this dossier as a pretext to spy on President Trump's team or President Trump himself, this is much more significant government scandal in terms of the Obama administration, the Justice Department, and the FBI than, frankly, anything Hillary Clinton did.
Well, clearly. And Jordan, final question. I mean, what can we look forward to in the next few weeks?
I think that confidential informant is going to change everything. I think it's why you're going to start seeing both sides try to speed up their activity because you've got people on the run right now, so to speak, in Washington, D.C., and now they know a confidential informant is going to be able to provide information on the influence Russians were trying to assert on the Clintons, both Hillary and Bill Clinton, specific to uranium deals in the United States that were ultimately approved by President Obama.
Very sad. All right, Tom Fitton, Jordan Sekelo, thanks so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
All right, and coming up, the media once again is doing everything it can to defend Hillary Clinton and the Democrats against these scandals. We'll play some of the most biased moments next as this special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to Hannity. With the Clintons and other prominent Democrats now embroiled in their own Russia scandals, the left's most faithful ally, the mainstream media, is providing plenty of cover for their comrades. For example, take a look at some of these egregious attempts to defend, deflect, and even blame Fox News for the current Russia troubles of the left. Take a look.
Look over there! The Trump administration trying to divert attention away from the Mueller investigation by pinning the Russia problem on Hillary and Bill Clinton.
Remember, I mean, this whole uranium thing comes from Fox News. This is a story that has been pushed in recent weeks by Fox News, even though it was settled in 2015. I mean, it's an old story.
So this is just a counter-narrative, and it has been pushed by Fox, and it has therefore also been embraced by the White House.
It's a claim that's been debunked for years. Note that giant false graphic on Snopes.com.
If you turn on Fox or you look at Breitbart or any of these, you would think that Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder were the ones that hacked the election, that helped steer it towards Russia. It is absolutely absurd.
The Trump dossier is back in the news along with lots of hype. So let's clear up fact from fiction. We knew the dossier was funded by Trump opponents in both parties. The big question is whether it was true.
When there's opposition research, the candidate rarely knows. Certainly the campaign chairman would know, but the campaign manager usually would.
Joining us now, Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk and Fox News contributor and former Clinton pollster Doug Schoen. Doug, I go to you right away.
Please.
Because as someone who worked with those Clintons, let's talk about how they spend their money.
The idea that the Clintons, or any other candidate for that matter, Judge, would spend $12 million and the candidate would not know what was being done and what was the result of what is being done. Strains credulity. Put another way, I was in the 96 campaign with Leon Panetta. He would have known about big expenditures. I certainly knew about big expenditures, and the president would have known. No evidence Bill Clinton would have known about this. Every reason to believe Hillary Clinton would have.
Okay, so Charlie, I'll go to you then. Given that it's clear that this money went from the Clinton Foundation and from the Clinton campaign and the DNC, doesn't it seem now that it's time for Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, who came in and said to Jeff Sessions, get out of the way, Jeff. Let's appoint Bob Mueller. Isn't it time for him to say, Bob Mueller, get out of the way. You're in the middle of this whole thing, and then appoint a special counsel to investigate the Clintons?
Yeah, I agree with the Wall Street Journal, what they said. He should step down. He should resign. And I agree. There should be a special prosecutor into this Uranium One deal. I mean, you look at what the Clintons did. So they lost the presidential election in 2008, the primary. So they said, how can we make a bunch of money, as Secretary of State? Oh, let's sell out something very valuable to America. How about our uranium? Let's sell it out to some Russian billionaires and take a bunch of cash to our charitable foundation. $110 million in quid pro quo. quo. And you hear the media, you heard those sound clips. They say, oh, this is put forth by Fox News. No, actually, it was the New York Times that reported on this 10 days ago. They said that there's uranium being taken out of the state of Wyoming and being illegally exported to Canada, and this was signed because of Hillary Clinton selling out America as Secretary of State in quid pro quo for cash to the Clinton Foundation.
Well, in addition to the other people on CFIUS, but the fact that there were other people on the committees that approved this sale doesn't make her pay for play any less illegal. But let me ask you this.
Please.
Doug, look, you have worked with the media for many years. You worked in presidential campaigns. Okay, how does Jeffrey Toobin, now that guy's a lawyer, supposed to be a smart guy.
Right.
Where does he get off saying this thing was settled in 2015? Who settled this whole thing of the Uranium One deal in 2015?
Look, Jeff Toobin is a friend of mine, but he's wrong in this case.
Clearly.
Judge, clearly. Look, this calls for a special prosecutor, someone separate and distinct from Bob Mueller with no ties to the FBI, because one of the big questions that we have to figure out with the dossier is what happened with the FBI, what was their role, and with the uranium deal, there's so many questions. The money funneled through Canada, the speech in Moscow by President Clinton, what Hillary Clinton knew, what she didn't know. She says she didn't know anything. Let's do an investigation. I was all for the Russia investigation. I'm a Democrat, but I'm also for doing an investigation of the uranium deal.
Well, then let me ask you this. If you were all for the Russian investigation, after 11 months of nothing, they announced we don't have anything, but we're still looking. Time to shut it down.
Well, I don't think it's time to shut it down.
Why? What did they come up with?
Well, we don't know. We are still looking at General Flynn and Paul Manafort, and my reaction is let's see what happens with those two individuals and see where it leads. We know Flynn was working with the Russians.
Okay, well, but you know what? Honestly, Charlie Kirk, I mean, DOJ could have handled Manafort and Flynn. There didn't need to be a special prosecutor. And Rosenstein, I question his motives. What say you?
Yeah, and he was the one that originally actually advised Attorney General Sessions to recuse himself. So it's important to note that. But you look at the bigger picture here and what the media is trying to paint. What I think is so disturbing is they say Donald Trump Jr. takes one meeting a year and a half ago that resulted in nothing. He came on the front page then of Time magazine with the word traitor. They called him a traitor for nearly a month straight. He had to then testify many times in front of senators in a closed session. And now you have all these new developments that Hillary Clinton actually sold out something of value for $110 million to her foundation. She says, oh, I knew nothing about that. $110 million, really? You knew nothing about that? You look at that, the horrible discrepancy there, and Don Jr. took one meeting, and that was all they could talk about for 2 months. And they were saying, oh, it's treason, he's a traitor. I mean, the double standard is horrendous, and we need a special prosecutor to look into Hillary Clinton.
And I have to tell you, Doug, do you see the double standard?
What I see are issues that need to be investigated. When General Flynn goes to Russia, sits with Vladimir
We're
Putin,
not talking about General Flynn. We're talking
I'm saying
about the
there are issues on
Clinton
both
campaign.
sides.
Well, no,
I'm saying
but
investigate
if Flynn
both sides.
violated the law, that's fine. We're talking about the Trumps. That they would take Donald Trump Jr., who took a meeting. I ran for office. I took a meeting with anyone who'd tell me. I'd take a meeting with the devil.
You didn't meet with me. I was working against you.
And you lost.
I know, and I never let me forget it. You did. You Trump.
All right, now I Trump.
Bad joke.
Yeah, bad joke. Now I forgot the question. But listen, I mean, for
here's
them,
the issue.
Yeah.
The issue is not what Donald Trump Jr. did. In my mind, it's what did the Russian lawyer who was in the room, who was coordinating with the Kremlin.
Natalia Netzeslaya.
Right. I'm going to get the name wrong, but that's what I'm concerned with, what the Russians were up to. Donald Trump Jr., I don't believe, appeared to be complicit.
But they're blaming Trump. Donald Trump Jr. did nothing. There's no connection.
Opinion.
Charlie, last word. We got to go to break.
Yeah, look, it resulted in nothing, unlike the Hillary Clinton, scandal. $110 million came out of it. Big difference.
Let's investigate,
so it's important to draw that distinction.
I think it's $145 million to that slush fund foundation.
Let's investigate before we reach conclusion.
Guys. Coming up, more of this special edition of Hannity right after the break.
Premiere of The Ingram Angle.
Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Tonight, we want to hear from you. What do you think about the anti-Trump dossier scandal? Head over to my Twitter. It's at Judge Jeanine, and let me know what you think. But before we go tonight, the movie Sean executive produced, it's called Let There Be Light, is out in theaters today. Earlier this week, Sean spoke with Kevin and Sam Sorbo, as well as their son Braden, about the film. Take a look.
All right, so this is the weekend. Let There Be Light. Theaters near you on Hannity.com, LetThereBeLightMovie.com. We hope you go see it. Yes, we are taking over Hollywood. At least we're going to try. Kevin, Sam, Sorbo, Braden, Sorbo. By the end of this weekend, you're going to be a rock star. You know that.
I hope. That's the goal.
Is that the goal? You were so mean to your father in the movie.
He was mean to me. You weren't. What is that? What's up with that? Anyway?
Then I did a good job.
You did a good job.
Oh, see, I like it. A lot of confidence, but you did do a good job. All right, so it was about a year and a half, nearly 2 years ago. What was it? God's Not Dead.
God's Not Dead.
You did a great job.
I came here for God's Not Dead. I came here for Soul Surfer and all that.
Yeah.
And you called me up and said, I want to do a movie with you.
What was I thinking? I had no idea.
Do you have anything? And I said, we do.
Yeah.
And we came here with Dan Gordon, who co-wrote with Sam, and we pitched you. And I keep telling people, like, we talked for 20, 25 minutes. Dan Gordon didn't stop, and Sean didn't interrupt one time.
Yeah, no, shocking. I know. I don't have that reputation yet. But here's what I've been saying in all the interviews that I've done. I have been saying Hollywood is formulaic. Mm-hmm. This is what you get in Hollywood. You get sex, violence, you get Spider-Man 90,
sure.
You get Jennifer Aniston falls in love with whoever the new Hollywood person is, yeah. And then they break up, or they get married, or they fall in love, and they have a baby and a dog, and then the movie ends. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it.
Sure.
And there has been contempt for conservative Christian faith values in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, an antidote, and we went independent, which means this is totally different.
Well, you know, this is the story, like Sam brought this up before, about going back to what Hollywood used to be before the 60s when everything changed.
Yeah.
Where you do movies where you have characters that people can identify with and like and want to see the movies over and over and over again. And that's this type of movie.
Well, also what I'm telling people, you are the meanest. He writes a book, Aborting God, and is proud of it.
I was acting.
He abandoned his family. You were a drunk, a womanizer, a drug addict.
Sure.
And you helped transform his life. You had the patience of Job dealing with him.
Well, you know, you write a story that hopefully is compelling. You want people to be interested. And in order to be compelling, you have to have characters that sort of brush against extremes, right?
And there's growth. There's an arc. You want to see the arc.
So that you can see that. You have to juxtapose it with what he was before to what he becomes. And that, I think that's what's appealing to people, is people identify a little bit with each of the characters in the movie. And that's what's great about the movie. That's why it touches people so much.
Every single person I've shown this movie to cries.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
And your son makes them cry.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
He does. He's got the comic relief.
They just got to look at me and it boom.
But how was I as a director? Come on.
You know, director or dictator?
Yeah, come on.
Oh, you were really good.
Just got burned on Hannity.
Is this your first movie, or you've done other things?
This was my first movie, and I was really nervous, but it was a lot of fun.
You and your brother did fantastic.
Thank you.
And you're protecting your mom against him. Is that what it's like in real life?
No, I think it's the other way around.
He has a two-parent family. I think for a lot of kids his age in a single-parent family, it comes to that, right? I mean, that's why this film touches people, because they recognize that there's a lot of reality in it.
This movie, in the screenings we've done and get the testimonials from people, we're finding out that women love it, but men love it even more because it touches them. It's because we do have a father problem in this country. Look what they do in sitcoms. The dads are always fat and dopey and stupid. The mom's hot. The kids make fun of dad. So you got generations growing up with this over the last 20, 30 years. How do they treat that? We're treated that way. There's such a bad attitude.
I think this is also grabbed from the front pages. You're right. It hits every societal problem. But in as much as if there's a debate on a college campus today, and the guy that writes Aborting God, and it's debating a Christian, he's going to have the crowd on his side.
Oh, yeah.
Which
is amazing.
And the most amazing thing is you're torn back. Come back. You have all your handlers that want you to make more money and more money and more money, and you try.
I
it didn't work out well.
Well, he becomes, you know, he has an event that definitely changes his worldview, that makes him actually go spiral even further down, because he doesn't know how to handle this.
How did we win an award for a film that hasn't come out yet? Can anyone explain that?
You enter film festival, and we entered a film festival, and we won an award. It was fantastic.
Looks great. Anyway, don't forget to tune in tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern for Justice. Congressman Ron DeSantis, Corey Lewandowski, Mike Huckabee, Jason Chaffetz, and the chairman of the board of the Museum of the Bible in D.C. All of them will...
Lots of breaking news tonight, beginning with shocking new details on who funded the original Fusion GPS opposition research on President Trump. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, and this is Fox News Tonight. Thanks for being with us. Brand new information. We now know the conservative publication, the Washington Free Beacon, set in motion opposition research that eventually led the Dems to a dossier that includes unverified claims regarding ties between Trump and Russia. For more on this developing story, let's go right to James Rosen, who is in D.C. with the latest. James.
Jesse, good evening. The Washington Free Beacon said tonight it has approached the House Intelligence Committee to answer questions about the money the conservative news outlet paid to the firm Fusion GPS in 2015 and 2016 for the purpose of conducting research into the life of then-candidate Donald Trump. All of the work that Fusion GPS provided to the Free Beacon was based on public sources, and none of the work product that the Free Beacon received appears in the Steele dossier, said Free Beacon founders and editors Matt Continetti and Michael Goldfarb. The Free Beacon had no knowledge of or connection to the Steele dossier, did not pay for the dossier, and never had contact with, knowledge of, or provided payment for any work performed by Christopher Steele. Now, the Steele dossier was compiled for Fusion GPS by this man, former British spy Christopher Steele, whose research into Mr. Trump in 2016 reportedly included interviews with top Russian spies and diplomats. The Steele dossier brimmed with highly salacious rumors about Mr. Trump, but its contents went unverified, even as the dossier landed in the hands of U.S. lawmakers, the FBI, and various news outlets. BuzzFeed published the contents en toto in January. The Washington Post disclosed last week that the Steele dossier was bankrolled by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. So what apparently began as a Republican-funded effort to discredit Mr. Trump on the basis of publicly available sources ended early in 2016, was picked up by the Clinton campaign and the DNC, and became an effort to unearth private information from Moscow. All of this is significant, of course, because for more than a year, leading Democrats have alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin, and the special counsel's probe has been examining that allegation. The disclosures about the funding of the Steele dossier suggest it was the Democrats seeking to benefit from Russian intervention. Jesse.
Thank you, James.
You bet.
Now, the mainstream media and the left continue to downplay new developments in both the Russian dossier story and the controversial Uranium One deal. Take a listen to this exchange from the White House press briefing today.
Why did the president involve himself in the Uranium One investigation? Are you trying to gin up your own Russia investigation to rival the one up on Capitol Hill? And where is the president's evidence that Hillary Clinton colluded with the Russians, as he tweeted this morning?
In terms of the president being involved, I'm not aware of any specific involvement. The president has pushed for transparency, if that's what you're referring to when dealing with Congress.
And the CNN legal analyst seemed to find a curious scapegoat for the genesis of the uranium story.
This whole uranium thing comes from Fox News. I mean, this is a